I'm all about them.
The first one was fine. I mean, honestly, if I was to put them in order, it'd be the first
Digital
one,
dinosaurs
and then the first one with Chris Pratt,
in my mouth,
and then 3, then 2, and then
Sloshing
I didn't
around.
even watch the other one.
and a cistern of beer.
That's good. And
Yeah.
you swallowed it all at once.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, look at that! We got little tallies, and they're big.
That's what I'm working on.
Yeah, programmatic. Well, you got 5 minutes, and then we're starting.
Is that how many times we say?
What? I mean, it's not automatic.
Oh, that would be awesome.
That would be funny.
It just automatically looks where it goes. Yep, ding. I'm gonna win this one. F you, Brett.
I just love Mark's just like, it's not automatic, you piece of shit. How dare you, sir?
Clink, clank.
Clink, clink, clang, clunk.
clink
I just
to
want
the
you to know
clank.
that there are Pokemon called Clink, Clank, and Clunk.
Clink,
Or
clank to the
or
clunk.
whatever, I don't know.
Did you like that picture I sent you while we were playing Division?
Yeah, it was hilarious. It was good. It was good. Hello and welcome to the Strange Happy Hour, that weekly tech and video game news podcast here, a part of the Strange Gaming Network. I'm one of your hosts, Brent the Jesterhead Metcalf, alongside to my left
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
and to my other left.
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
The John Pettit, handsome John.
Handsome John, we are here to bring you all of the news of last week, along with a few topics that we kind of missed the week before, because guess what? There's a lot of news going on. But before that, we need to introduce our special guest of the week. You will probably see, hopefully, above this little thing in this little corner where there's
It was
supposed to be
there
an
this
eye. Oh, it was there this week. Look at that. Look at that. He's doing it. He's doing his job. You will find a recipe book video that talks about the Evening Joe and the Cabarrus Vanilla Coffee Blonde. These are two beers from local breweries, but you can hear more about that in the video above. There is a lot of really cool things that have happened in the news. I don't know if you're aware of this, but E3 is coming around the corner. We're very excited. We're probably going to do something special for this. We have to figure that out. But that's not important right now. You know what it is? The important shit. We did not talk about a actual run of the show whatsoever beforehand because this is happy hour. Why would we plan anything whatsoever?
That's great. Why are you looking at me?
So we're going to move on to the dispatcher to start us off about Overwatch and Epic and what?
You know, Epic just continuing their train of, here's the money. You all can have it. They bought out, I say bought out.
They're going to one day.
They hired the Overwatch League boss.
Interesting.
His name is Nate Nanzer.
Okay.
And he is the one that's been responsible for starting the Overwatch League, which had its first season last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it was envisioned in 2016 anyway, and had some like prelim stuff before that. But the first actual Overwatch League was last year, and Nate Nanzer has now moved on to Epic because Epic wants to set up competitive gaming
Fortnite
for
League.
Fortnite,
Yeah.
and now Rocket League.
Yep.
I mean the RLCS has already been a thing, for I think we're on 3 years now anyway. The Rocket League Championship Series has been a thing, but. It's interesting to see them bring in a head that has already participated in the esports league or in esports realm anyway. I just can't help but think that this is just them continuing to want to buy their way into everything and nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of people getting into the esports. I mean, we've even heard about a bunch of celebrities like pumping a lot of money into esports lately,
Yeah.
so I'm not surprised to hear that they're making big moves. Someone's got to. Someone's got to push it hard because right now they don't. I mean, yeah, we talk about it. We know it's there, but we really don't. We don't know any names. We know a few teams.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if you ever look at this network, you'll probably find a bunch of content. As a matter of fact, Dylan and Kepley went out this past weekend. They went to a Charlotte esports event and helped around with that for 12 odd hours on Saturday. It is interesting because on the one hand, like the large companies have two options to get into something. They can either build up to it, which if you're not in on the ground floor means you're taking time. You could build it well, but it also means you're behind, or you buy it.
Yeah.
So we saw Activision do this when they bought King because they want to get into mobile gaming.
Yeah.
Rather than taking a portion of Activision and starting from scratch, they just bought one of the most prevalent developers, and arguably they're doing a very good job because King is continuing to make games and make money for that
And they
company.
bought Passionate Gaming whenever they went for Blizzard.
Yeah, and killed it, unfortunately.
And slaughtered it.
And that is always the fear. That is, especially when it comes to large corporations that are constantly worried about their bottom dollar, that is always the fear. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad move for Epic because, again, like, do you start from scratch or do you buy one of the better people who's building a product?
Especially whenever they're making as much money as they are off of Fortnite, which I imagine it's tailed off at this point. We haven't really talked much about their income streams in a little while.
I haven't really seen any news on it, to be honest with you. So that's
Yeah, because I mean, I know they hit like a record high at some point, and that kind of thing, and I haven't heard anything more about it. But I'd imagine they still have a decent amount of income coming from Fortnite being still as popular a game as it is, just because they've had so many integrations with celebrities and whatnot. But I guess buying their way in is the only way to really do that at this point, to really have a stake in this.
to have
because
a
they
stake
don't-
so early.
Right, and they don't have a giant, like a tremendous backlog of games to go through like Valve does for Steam.
Yeah.
Or, Activision has like tons of, franchises and series that have been under their belt at this point. So,
Well, and we've had a Call of Duty League for how many years now? Like, it's been around forever. EA seemingly wants nothing to do with this, so they don't have Battlefield or anything competitively.
Well, they'd have to have a game to want to get behind to do that.
Oh, so it's not terribly surprising. Hopefully, this works out really well. I am very interested to see what's his name again
Nate Nanzer.
could bring to Epic and see what they can
absolutely.
build.
I'd be curious to know how he organizes this kind of stuff. I'm more curious to see. I'm more curious to see what kind of events and what kind of
Yeah,
outcome actually comes from this.
especially for a game like Fortnite.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
not
100%.
only that, but like how much marketing there's going to be. A big issue I find with esports is getting the word out, getting
Yeah.
people's attention, getting on the tube, getting like somewhere on Twitch, getting events on Twitch that is easy to access and get people's attention, and put up some pretty nice headliners or some
impressive, by
banners.
the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's good. They're starting to get there. ESPN's starting to show esports events and stuff too. So it's just a slow build because it takes time to build this out. People who aren't in the video game industry or the tech industry like we are still look at them as children's toys,
Yeah.
which they're not anymore. They haven't been for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to get there. But speaking of losses, it looks like Huawei is also losing more than just Google features.
So we all thought, Google was going to be the biggest loss to this. Like, this is, oh my God, this is tremendous, that kind of thing. It's really going to hurt. Two particular pieces of technology that I was not aware of that exist as nonprofit U.S. organizations that can no longer affiliate with Huawei are BSI, the Bluetooth. What is it? I'll have to look it up now.
It's fine.
I can't think of it now. Bluetooth
It's in
and
an article in the
micro-
description above us.
Blow.
Blow? What are you blowing? Got him.
This article. No, it's the BSIG, the Bluetooth Special Interest Group.
Okay.
They are a U.S.-based not-for-profit organization that gives their stamp of approval and puts everybody through, testing and whatnot anyway,
Yeah.
as far as their Bluetooth chips are concerned, to be able to actually connect to other Bluetooth devices. Now, them being Chinese-based anyway, Huawei could reverse engineer the technology because a lot of this information is public knowledge. Not to mention they've already built on it in the past. But a lot of that was done with who makes the Snapdragon processors? It'll come to me. Anyway, the Snapdragon chips are responsible for a lot of that Bluetooth connectivity. So they could reverse engineer a lot of that. Now, actually, I come to think of it, Huawei doesn't use Snapdragon chips. Actually, they use their own custom brand. But to reverse engineer that Bluetooth stuff, they could do it because they're in China. There are no copyright laws like
Yeah.
that there. So they could do that. They obviously just can't sell their products in the U.S., which they already weren't going to be able to do anyway.
I would say I don't think they have been, have they? Yeah. So
But-
Qualcomm.
Well, no. Huawei's been selling their products in the U.S.
have they?
Oh, they've got like a 10% market share.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah. Of the Android space.
Okay.
But they're going to lose that. Not
Qualcomm.
to mention they'll lose their ability to connect to a lot of other Bluetooth devices if they can't figure out how to work the technology because they can't get the specs for modern Bluetooth devices like Bluetooth 5.0. If they don't already have it in the Mate 30, they're going to have a hard time implementing in the next couple of devices.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to figure out how the technology works. They're going to have to program it themselves. They're going to have to figure it all out on their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's gonna be super
And it's going to be
expensive.
super expensive and super difficult unless they can find another contractor that already has the technology. The other technology that they're going to use, or that they're not going to be able to use, is micro SD.
Yeah.
That exists, again, as part of another non-for-profit organization that sets the standard for it and increases the speed and everything else that's associated with that. US-based company. Can't work with US-based companies anymore.
So the micro SD, I think, is less of a loss. We already have phones that Apple for years has
Yeah.
not allowed the SD cards. You just increase the memory size.
So
and-
Huawei's been one of those companies that still includes one as a like we can still be a
Yeah,
smartphone killer and include this stuff.
You would just cut that out and increase the memory of your phone. Problem solved. But the Bluetooth is a huge loss.
Well,
Well, yeah,
there's other
especially-
things called like Z-Wave. You'd be able to use that as a substitute for Bluetooth if you
Well,
created
but-
the devices to work with it.
Well, that's the
But
problem is you
would
have,
that
to,
be
you
too
have to have the
expensive?
ecosystem because right now the only thing that uses Z-Wave are like home security products or they're smart home products.
Well,
Yeah.
they're all the shortwave stuff that you would use with your headset, stuff that Bluetooth wise that you could
Right.
potentially use.
But how many Z-Wave headsets do you see? How many Z-Wave
No, they would have to create it
headphones?
themselves, which is my
Exactly.
point. Like, they would have to
Oh, yeah,
actually make
there's
their
other
own line of
wireless tech that
products.
they can invest into, but the difference is they're going to have to make the chips themselves. They're going to have to make the boards themselves. They're going to have to write the low-level firmware and software for them like themselves. They're going to have to do all the board architecture for all of that. Like it's not.
It's going to be
it's-
expensive.
It's a super difficult feat to really make happen.
I could do it in a day.
So there's a lot more to do there. The SD stuff, anyway, at least they have a backup that they're supposed to be replacing with. It's nowhere near as fast as like the newest micro SD class 10 speed cards, whatever. But they at least do have a backup for that. Bluetooth is going to be probably the big one for
Yeah.
them, I think.
Yeah.
Now, it hasn't been a confirmed thing yet. BSIG has not outright said that we are going to deny them, but they're going to have to.
But I said the tea leaves seem to be reading right now.
No,
that that's the case.
I mean, they're on an executive ban list, so you can't work with Huawei at this point. So
yeah.
Man.
that's sort of the big one.
Speaking of things that I don't understand, what's going on with Starlink and these satellites? I don't get it. Starlink's a game made by Ubisoft. They don't have satellites.
Right. So this is a product anyway that or a brainchild of Elon Musk that has come out with SpaceX. This is something we've talked about on the podcast, or I've talked about on the podcast anyway. I think it was a couple months ago anyway, because it was first envisioned about 6 months ago. Basically, Starlink is supposed to be a high-speed, internet-based satellite system that is going to be globally, like from anywhere.
Yeah.
Oceanic, poles, everything.
Yeah.
Because it consists of a network of about 12,000 low-altitude satellites. The problem right now with satellite-based internet is that most of the satellites fly at about 22,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. The problem is the latency, just literally air frequency latency anyway, is just absurd. It's
You're well outside our atmosphere and you're just floating in space at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
so Musk and SpaceX got approval for Starlink to fly the satellites at 230 to 350 miles or 340 miles above the Earth, surface of the Earth.
Interesting.
So the difference is you remove that latency. You just have to put tremendously more satellites up there to make it happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Now, for them, it's much easier to work with. So the SpaceX, anyway, the big draw for SpaceX is reusable rockets.
Yeah.
So they have a rocket that goes up, and literally it will reverse itself and bring itself back down in a completely computerized system and land itself on its own pad. And it's had many successes up to this point, and specifically, Starlink has launched its first 60 satellites
Oh, nice.
of its massive network. So they're going to be running apparently like monthly runs, basically between like that low orbit of the Earth and back to their launch pads,
Nice.
reloading with new satellites and launching and dispersing satellites across the orbit. And literally, this rocket propels itself to a certain part of the orbit and releases a satellite, and it stays there. And then it goes to the next piece and then releases another satellite. And it will continue to do that until all 12,000 have been released. And the FCC's already approved this. It's an ongoing program.
That is awesome.
That is really cool.
The promised speeds on this are about a gigabit over the air.
Ooh. As someone who doesn't quite understand how flight works because it's all magic and there's an engine involved, where do planes fly compared to where these satellites are?
Okay, so you're talking 220 miles above the Earth.
Yeah.
So let me just at the low
You're
end.
supposed to be the dispatcher. He's supposed to know this
Let's
already.
put it this way:
Why is he
most planes only
Googling?
fly about
Okay.
anywhere between 40 to 70,000.
There we
feet.
go. Thank you. That's
Not
what I
even.
need.
Yeah,
actually,
that's giving a lot.
40s on the high end.
Okay.
45 is normally where they'll cruise at for long distance.
Yeah, if you're going for like the super long distance stuff, like you're flying from Houston to like Narita or Tokyo or something like that. Yeah, okay, fine.
Tokyo.
You'll push between like 35 and 40,000 feet just because you're going super high altitude
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
plane designed to do it and that kind of stuff.
So
Yeah,
essentially,
the
these
reason
are
I said that was because of the Mach 3s that they were testing. They said they went up
Yeah.
to 70,000 feet.
apparently this is just well above where planes fly.
Right.
So we're,
Yeah.
So
we're good in that.
We're safe.
Federally regulated airspace tops off at 60,000 feet, but the majority of flights generally operate anywhere between 25 and 40,000.
Okay.
The majority of flights that go, like, for example, in the U.S. cross country, if you were going from like L.A. to New York, for example, you're only going to hit maybe 36 to 38,000 feet.
Do you get Cowboy Bebop vibes off this?
Yes.
Satellites everywhere. It is really cool. I'm excited
it's
to
gonna
see.
have like advertisements on it soon.
Yeah.
By comparison, this is about 1.1 million feet in the air.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You're,
So,
you're never going to get anywhere near
you don't
it.
have to
It's-
worry
it's-
about
it's
hitting
pretty close.
your
Now,
plane hitting.
have
a
they
satellite.
talked about like the space junk aspect? Like
So-
eventually satellites fail, they fall.
So that's actually been a concern that's been expressed. The FCC has decided to take that into some consideration.
I'm glad. Good for them.
The reason that it's not going to be as big of a problem anyway with mid-air collisions. One, we don't have that many things that fly up that altitude anyway,
Yeah, they're usually higher or lower. So.
and we haven't invested in a space program like worthy of trying to track all of that to manage it in the first place.
Yeah.
SpaceX right now is probably the biggest space program you'll find around to do it, other than maybe like Richard Branson with his
Yeah.
was it Virgin Space.
Well, I definitely was going to say I think one of the bigger factors right now, and one of the reasons why NASA doesn't go up and handle satellites or other projects, is because it just costs money. Because you don't have a reusable, other than the shuttle, you don't have a reusable aspect.
Right.
Whereas SpaceX is built off of that reusability, so I can easily see where they're like, "Cool, we're just going to fly up and catch that satellite because it's done."
Yeah, I was about to say,
It's-
like,
it's
if that was
what's-
possible, that would be really cool. Or if, like, the rockets, like you're talking about, if they go up and then they have a maintenance where they,
Yeah.
all right, I need to come down for maintenance to make sure
Yeah.
everything's good.
Well,
and then
so the
another one takes its
majority of
place.
satellites that we've had up there now have been up for, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say the majority. I'll say the oldest satellites we've probably got up there are probably in the 50s.
Yeah.
They're like near 50 years old anyway, because the space race started.
60. So
Space race started in the
60s.
60s,
Yeah.
right around the Cold War. So I would say that, like, that's not really an issue anyway up to this point. Don't get me wrong. Way down the line,
Well,
like
and
space
you're-
junk will be a thing to manage, but the question is, at what point does that become a problem? Because it like you really have to manage the different altitudes. So you're talking 220 miles above the Earth versus 22,000 miles above the Earth.
It really doesn't matter. The Earth will fry before that
Well,
happens.
not only
anyway.
Exactly.
that,
So,
but
yeah,
like
they're fine.
if you do have like a space exploration or a satellite that you're putting up in high orbit, you're gonna have to take all of that into account because you're not gonna want to hit any of this stuff going out.
They're
of
going
the
to start
exosphere.
mapping it better
100%.
because you're going to have to in order to maintain that kind of level of
Yeah.
stuff. And that'll be on SpaceX themselves to begin with, and then we'll start having maps. It's like
Right, you know, I
cartographers
mean,
of the 1700s that went
At
around.
a certain
and,
point, Elon Musk is responsible for every bit of technology that exists on the Earth anyway, so you're going to have to ask for his blessing on everything anyway, and he's going to make sure that you do it safely. So
That's gonna be an awesome.
thank you,
piece of
Tony
tech.
Stark. Moving on to something that has nothing to do with satellites, but does have to do with Ubisoft. You see the connective tissue here, folks? Talk to us
Totally.
about Steam and AC Unity.
Right now, Steam has got a problem with a positive review bomb, which I didn't think was actually going to be a possible thing, but apparently they had applied for it. They just didn't have an instance to which it had occurred. So with AC Unity, they had given out a bunch of free copies to people, and this is in response to the Notre Dame Cathedral burning,
Yep.
and people wanting to like basically go and see what it was, and they were like, yeah, you know what, cool, whatever, and they ended up getting a bunch of positive reviews. It ended up increasing their overall score by like only 1.3%. So it really wasn't like a true review bomb, but at the same time, it was enough for them to like look at this and say, well, this is a nice softball pitch. It was comparative to what
Well,
could have happened.
But I mean, just based on like even 1.3% increase anyway can still be tremendous in a game that's even remotely established at that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well,
you know-
especially with a controversial game that was basically touted as horrible.
Yeah.
Like at best, even with all of the software upgrades like we talked about earlier, they were still having massive
I mean,
issues.
like Borderlands 2 being the unintentional bystander of, the slaughter of Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
So, the first case, the reason that the review bombs were put into place was because of Borderlands 2. People were review bombing it because Borderlands 3 had an Epic exclusivity contract for 6 months. People didn't like that, so they review bombed it. Well, this was in the opposite case. Well, if they're review bombing it, it's because there's a bunch of unnecessary reviews that didn't have anything to do with the game itself.
Yeah.
Though people did say they did return and liked it more after the software upgrade, so they did actually change their response or gave it a better response than they would have. So they decided to leave it alone because it wasn't as big of a interaction that it should have been to be considered a review bomb in the first place.
To clarify, Steam did come up with a solution for this for an off-topic section.
What do you
So
mean?
all the Borderlands 3 reviews anyway that were coming in on the Borderlands 2 page anyway were moved to an off-topic section that does not affect their overall rating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for this, if it's a review bomb actually related to the game itself, then it's actually on topic. There's not a whole lot they can really do about
Well,
it.
this apparently happened over a month ago, and they're just now really getting to like
Really?
the conclusion of which they
Yeah.
decided what they were going to do about it.
The weekend that Notre Dame was on fire, they gave out these free copies, and people started really positively looking at it. And I do believe that part of that is also just roast into glasses. You got the copy for free. You're going through the process, and
Yeah.
you have some nostalgia or some personal connection to Notre Dame. Like you're going to give it a
There was
better.
a lot of factors they were taking into
Yeah,
account.
yeah.
It's like, so like, was this really a positive review bomb in the fact that, with all of these variables, with the nostalgia effect, with, getting it free and just wanting to be nice to the people that gave you the free game. And it was just like, it was too much. They were like,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. It only went up 1.3%. It's pretty much the same.
We'll
So
be
we're just
fine.
going to leave it as it is.
Yeah.
No reason to cause a big kerfuffle for nothing.
Yeah, that is really cool. That is very interesting.
Something to keep an eye out for later because I want to see what a positive review bomb could be done in a negative aspect.
Exactly.
Someone's going to find it. I want to see what happens.
Well, and given all the interesting press around Ubisoft and the technology used to actually map the Notre Dame Cathedral, like I think it's fitting and interesting, and I'm glad they kind of left it alone.
Yeah.
So
me too.
not in the gaming space. We've already actually kind of seen this once anyway with Advanced Warfare whenever that got released.
What do you mean by that?
Remember the YouTube
Yeah,
page for
yeah.
like it was like 3 million thumbs down on YouTube and only like 1,000 thumbs up.
They actually deleted the video, put it back up, and it got still 3,000. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, like people were just all over it.
Speaking
Man.
of software stores on your PC, let's talk about Epic Games and blocking users for buying games.
Yeah. So unfortunately, because Epic Store is still fairly, young, someone who just bought 5 games, ranging anywhere between $5 and $50, and they were basically blocked. And because of their stringent fraud barriers that they put up, because it's super sensitive anyway, you can get it. So because they put up sales, people bought a bunch of games, and then everybody they got blocked or they got their account locked. And you had to contact customer service to get it unlocked. And that right now, that's what they're saying. There's no fix for this right now. We're just gonna have to deal with it.
What?
Yeah.
It's some parameters. You say
They're going to change it.
Increase.
And one of the easiest things to do is to put in a cart.
Correct.
Put in a cart, and then you have one transaction, and you won't have this problem.
Yeah.
But they haven't done that yet, so they're like, it's coming. We can't do anything about this right now. Just contact customer service, and we'll help you out.
Growing pains of a store that is growing over time, and
Yeah.
they're really. I think that they do get a little of unfair flack. Granted, I have no horse in this race. I am not a PC gamer. I don't particularly care
Yeah.
one way or another. But it is disconcerting that this is a factor when you're just trying to
I
purchase
just love
games.
putting all this stuff out there because we keep seeing all this stuff with Steam and
Yeah.
Epic, and I'm just like, so, I mean, are they going to become what Steam is eventually? Are they going to eventually just slowly get better and become what Steam is? And it's just going to be like an Xbox PS4 rivalry?
just another reason why I'm probably going to end up why I will probably end up stop playing Rocket League
Yeah.
after December.
That's sad. It makes me sad.
Snapdragon, by the way, is Qualcomm.
Moving on to another publisher, THQ Nordic. What's going on with them?
So right now, THQ Nordic has 80 games in development that they just have 80 games in development. And right now, only 48 of them are still unannounced. Only 48 of them are still unannounced. They only have 2 publishers and 1 studio. And right now, as we know of, Metro has a AAA project that is still in the works, but also meaning that they still have that much to come out here soon. And that's within the next year and quarter, I think it is. So we'll see exactly what happens. But there's just too much going on right now with THQ Nordic with all of the acquisitions that they had bought all this stuff and they have access to so many things, but I don't think they understood what they were getting into when they bought all this.
I'm a very big fan of what they're attempting to do. They're trying to be the most AA, AAA developer possible. Like they're trying to grow so they can rival Activision, they can rival Ubisoft, which I'm very
pump
much
out
a
software
fan
like
of.
crazy.
On a double A level though.
On a AA level, which is fine because I think the AA space needs to be played with a lot. We have a problem right now where it's just not touched, and so you have $60 games and $20 games and nothing in between. But also, what are you doing? This is exactly what THQ did, and they folded under their own weight.
And then you bought them and then took on their struggles
Just
and kept their name too. It's like
Yeah.
The second Apocalypse. These are the same people that brought you Darksiders 3, that brought you Metro Exodus. Like a lot of good games, and they also bought company. It's Deep Silver, Coffee Stain.
Yeah, so Deep Silver, which is working on Dead Island 2, apparently, still.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it is really interesting to watch what they're doing, because they've released good titles. Darksiders 3, arguably very
Yeah,
good.
I enjoy it.
They have a couple of other titles floating out there that aren't terrible, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. Don't fall.
Yeah,
Just
I was
keep it
gonna
going.
say, I'm super worried about THQ Nordic. I mean, they got to get these games out, and hopefully they're quality games, and they're not,
Yeah.
software junk that's just clouding up
I agree.
the marketplace.
I agree.
Yep.
Speaking of the AA space in games and not doing well, apparently the Japanese publisher Nippon Ichi has reached a point in which they have no funds to pay their employees. Nippon Ichi is very much a AA developer in Japan. They're really mostly sell their games in Japan, but they're known for the Disgaea series, the Cloudon series, fairly popular on PlayStation products for the most part. Very odd developer, but again, like that whole space of like we can fit right here in the middle and just build games.
You would think with Nintendo they would be able to get into that headspace pretty easily.
Yes and no. Some of their games are not necessarily kid friendly.
No, fair enough. I mean, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like Disgaea is a game that I feel like would go well on Nintendo. And games
You
like
have
it.
not played a Disgaea game, so
It is. Oh no, I'm thinking of Ease. Never mind.
correct.
My bad.
Yeah,
That's total. I don't know what Disgaea is. I remember you talking about it. You and Brian played it.
I played it on the PS Vita and
Yeah,
the PSP,
that's right.
and they're good games. They're just definitely have adult content.
All right.
It's
I'm about to
just
say, apparently, it's not what I'm thinking.
Nippon Ichi's been around since the late 90s, so like 97, 98. They've been quite a stand. Like when you think about Japanese publishers, especially that bring content to the US, they're very well known. And it really does make me sad because not only do they have interesting franchises, but again, they're playing in a space that most people don't bother to really touch,
Right.
developing interesting games. And I want that to continue. They're amongst a handful of Atlas used to be a part of it before they were bought by Sega. Compile Hearts is a part of it. Nippon Ichi, like these smaller publishers that develop very good games that are just, again, that AA space. And it would be really tragic for the industry, really Japanese gaming as a whole, but like the industry to lose another strong developer here in the AA space. Obviously not that strong because they're suffering from financial issues, but
Yeah,
frustrating nonetheless. I mean, especially if you can't pay your employees. I doubt anybody over there is very happy with the situation right now.
No kidding. I can't imagine how you're going to retain your employees after this point because they're going to
Yeah.
have no faith.
Yeah.
Like, how do you spend enough of your money that you're just sort of not giving the buffer or not building into the budget the
Yeah.
fact that you
Yeah.
have to pay your employees for the next year? Like,
This is what I thought it was. Yeah, it's a strategy role playing game. It gets pretty decent reviews.
Yeah. Oh, Disgaea is
I mean, I
very
just-
well known.
Like, why would that not go well with Nintendo though?
Adult content.
Like, how bad adult content? Are we talk about like full?
It's not terrible. It would be fine.
It's
Like,
just
there
like
is a Disgaea on DS. Like they literally made it Disgaea DS. There are some of the titles do release on Nintendo. It's not that they don't.
is that to tone them back? or?
I think for the most part, what they've made their money off of is handheld gaming, and handheld gaming is slowly going away.
I was gonna put. They definitely put out Bayonetta on Switch.
Nope, that's not them.
No, I know that's not that. That's Platinum Games.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if you can get away with Bayonetta,
I'd imagine that they're
I mean,
probably
this girl is like straight up almost naked in most of these
she
little cutscenes.
literally is naked, just covered in hair.
Yeah.
Her own hair, yeah. I do believe that they could probably strike a deal with Nintendo and be just fine, especially with the Switch taking over essentially what the Vita was.
Yeah.
May it rest in
Vita
peace.
2, 4G, 5G coming out here soon.
We all hope. Moving on to another news in the Japanese games industry, it appears that George Railroad Martin himself is conferring with a Japanese developer. This is all very much hearsay. The rumor on the street is that he is conferring with From Software, which is the developers behind Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all that, to help them with their story for their next title.
Spoiler alert, the beginning and middle of the game is going to be really good. The end's going to suck.
That has nothing to do with Railroad. You take his name out of that. Take his name out of that. I found this interesting because, one, that man is doing too much. Focus on the books for the love of God.
Please.
Please. We need a good ending.
We need one that makes sense.
Second of all, I mean, From Software is notoriously known for their titles having very much a story that's in the background. It's very atmospheric. It's very much built into item descriptions and like running around and kind of inferring based off of location and where you find items. And it has very little to do with the actual gameplay itself. I think Sekiro is probably the most story-driven game they've developed in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So him coming in to actually consult on a story is fascinating. So
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah.
I mean, especially if they could put it in that same kind of headspace with a good storyline. That would be awesome.
What I really want, because From Software has been around for quite some time, similar to Nippon Ichi, they're mid 90s where they popped up. They developed the Armored Core series. If you don't know what Armored Core is,
that's an old one.
Armored Core is a mech battler where you design your own mech and you design every piece of it. So arms, each arm can be individual, each leg can be individual.
Really?
You get jet boosters, all that, and you go in battle. But they kind of abandoned the franchise. They haven't really done a whole lot with it for a while. I would love a political, futuristic Armored Core game that has like a little bit more of a harder gameplay battle. You could lean into the Dark Souls if you really want, that's fine. Where you lose your mech, you lose like the pieces of it, so you have to build off of whatever you have left. So you basically build up backup shells.
So
Oh
you
my
want
God.
Gundam Wing?
Yeah, like a real
Gundam
Yeah,
Wing.
like not like the Muso, like, oh, our Dynasty Warriors destroyed. Like, no.
Yeah.
I want like a legitimate.
Story-based driven. Like, yeah, we do have mechs and we do stuff in mechs and it's solid gameplay, but it's really about the politics.
Incredible. Incredible.
It would be a very different genre of game.
I really
think it would actually create a new genre.
mechs in Westeros or something like that. Jeez.
I think you mean Mecteros. That was really bad. I'm sorry. That was not necessary.
We'll let it go. I think that would actually bring about its whole new like genre of game.
I agree, and quite
That would be
frankly,
cool.
I think Sekiro is a very much the evidence that these developers are kind of feeling stagnant in the franchises they've been working on. Moving on to another franchise is exciting for them. So here's another way to move forward past that. The final piece of Japanese gaming news, because that's all I have for you this week, is
Japan's busy.
Sony has started its own television and movie production company in the PlayStation brand.
Excited.
PlayStation Productions has now officially started. They are hiring and building up. And as a matter of fact, they have already announced that they will be working on a Twisted Metal television show.
That's going to
So
go really
excited.
good. And I hope they advertise it to kids.
I think that this is a fascinating setup. The entire purpose of this studio is to build properties based off of video games. I think we have talked a bit about it, but John and I definitely have off the show of, there are so many franchises that have these threads that they don't necessarily need to dive into in the games, but really building and fleshing out stuff in a show sounds phenomenal. Like a Bloodborne animated series similar to the Castlevania Netflix series.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, you could really play with Infamous and start
Kratos.
Kratos. I mean,
Infamous would be easier though.
Infamous, I think would be great because you can get away from Cole, you can get away from Delson, you can go into a different.
It'd be like a Jessica Jones.
Yeah, it could
a
be
little bit,
its own
yeah.
superhero series, which could be lo-fi if need be.
Just don't do powers. God, don't do powers.
Power season 1 was fine. It was corny.
Yeah, it was good. Like I
Season
enjoyed
2, I
it
just never
for
went
what it
back to.
was.
Yeah.
Like there was no like Marvel expectation or anything. It was almost Watchmen like.
Yeah.
I would say it was very much more like grounded, real superhero, but you're still people and you're still going to do stupid things and you're addicted to alcohol and sex.
Yeah.
Like,
But I mean, Sony has so many franchises in their own slot. A Ratchet and Clank animated series better happen. A Sly Cooper animated series better happen because those are.
didn't that movie flop?
The Ratchet and Clank movie did okay.
Yeah.
It did well enough, I guess. But I mean, turn that into a series where you can
Oh, yeah.
stream it would be perfect.
Yeah.
Like just add it to the Netflix stuff or Crackle because that's Sony's own thing. But building out some movies and franchises around this, and it doesn't even have to be Sony franchises alone. They could partner with Square Enix so that when Square Enix decides that they want to do Final Fantasy 16 as a multimedia project and build out TV shows and movies around it, Sony just helps publish it here. The PlayStation brand helps bring it here. Like those kinds of things, I think, could really lend to building a ecosystem as a whole. And then you start including PlayStation Plus, where you get these movies for free or these television shows for free.
That's because you're at that point intermingling everything. You're
Correct.
intermingling writers. You've got game developers that are coming in and
Exactly.
giving influence.
Exactly.
Like there's all kinds of stuff.
But
I
they
like
can't
it.
half-ass it. They've
No,
got
it has to
go
be
into this
full core
on.
production. Yeah.
Like we're talking like if you do a Final Fantasy series, like you could have so many different series and different types. You could do a realistic series for Final Fantasy VII. You could do a animated series for Final Fantasy, 10. You could probably do I would do probably what they have, like a CGI based Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
That would they have strong characters that they could easily work into.
Well, and they have other properties that are kind of lesser known, like The Last Guardian and Shadow of
Ooh, that would be a good one.
Colossus, right?
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, Shadow of the
His
Colossus.
predecessor.
Like those are Nyko. These are very small games that are kind of artistic, but could easily be influenced and kind of toured around and made to these artsy films with like different color schemes and.
But they're also going to have to be very careful too, because just like
Yeah.
everybody else falls into this trap of, oh, everybody likes this, we're going to make something of it. It's like, you just screwed this up and I hate you.
Could you
what
imagine-
you really need to have.
Can you imagine if they just like build out various shows and movies, and there's like teasers at the end of it for a PlayStation All Stars movie?
They just marveled it up, huh?
Wow.
Oh,
That would be great.
it'd be so good.
The honestly, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of content available to them. I mean, there is no shortage. I would you do a Last of Us TV show, not of Joel and Ellie, but another faction,
Exactly.
a group of people
And
in
that's
the
my-
same world.
That's my point. Do not make the mistake of trying to recreate a story that already exists. Do your own thing in
Yes.
that world.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
you will be so much better off. You could use Ratchet and Clank, no big deal. Their storylines are really inconsequential as long as you keep a couple main story points.
Yeah.
You're fine. But you go into something like, The Last of Us, and you're going with Joel and Ellie, you're going to screw up. I don't care what you do.
Well,
you could
be
have
the-
Ryan Reynolds in there and what's her face?
No, I want Idris Elba in any of these shows. I don't care which one.
Idris
Just put
Elba.
Idris Elba.
You,
Be the
me and you are
Rogue
both his
One
fans.
of any of your series at this point. Like, be the Rogue One. Find something
Yes.
else to do. Find something that bridges pieces of the storyline together that may not have seemed even
Look at
necessary.
some popular fan fiction, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Well, so they have an opportunity here to really play with like you're saying, like Rogue One it. Like give us a Last of Us that has nothing to do with them. Maybe it takes place in a different part of the world. It doesn't have to be America.
Yeah,
Maybe the
exactly.
same city. Maybe that literally Joel and Ellie are going around doing
Or
things,
that.
and you're just happen to see them and then move on. Like it would be a really cool little.
With the fireflies and the politics,
Yeah.
like that's fascinating. But you could also go back to Ratchet and Clank. Like Ratchet and Clank has a PSP game called Size Matters. They're never going to remake Size Matters. It's a fun. They're always funny puns. Was it?
Dirty puns.
There they are, yes. Going Commandos #2.
Yeah.
But like they're not going to remake these games, so put it into a children's show. That's fine with me. I think that's a great source material. You're pulling from the original. You can add layers to it because Size Matters is a 5-hour game. There's not a whole lot of story there, so play with it. Same with Sly Cooper. Sly Cooper 2 and 3. People aren't
Sly Cooper,
really
yeah,
going
really
back
good.
and replaying them, and you're not going to remake it. So just utilize that as your story backbone for a television
and the
series.
story for
'cause you
Sly
can-
Cooper is not that important anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of do anything that you want with it at that point, because at that point everyone's even kind of forgotten the titles or
Exactly.
the majority of the
Sonic
storylines
was
at
never
point,
that
so-
important either, and now he sees the Sonic movie coming out, and they're getting railed just for what he looks like, even slightly.
You are correct.
To be fair, like that started with Will Smith Blueface, and now it's Sonic. It's like literally
Blueface is the new blackface.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I was like, is this a
Like-
racist thing now?
like
Against aliens?
everyone's getting railed for something whenever it comes to a movie that's doing something different, and but Will Smith was still a good part of Aladdin there. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
No.
was it good?
Okay, we can talk about it later.
Left a lot to be desired. We'll talk after.
Yeah.
But like Will Smith was a great part of that film, even though he was the most controversial part of it.
Yeah.
I feel like Sonic is still going to be a great film, even
Which, by the way, they delayed,
Yeah.
which is great, so that people have time to actually work on it. No, I agree. Like, you both bring up valid points. Like, yes, there will be controversy, but I also agree with him in the sense of like things have kind of been left alone for these characters for long enough. Like,
Yeah.
Sonic literally had a brand new game released last year.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Sonic Mania. So there's enough of a fan base, and it's arguably a larger fan base than something like Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank. Especially if you get these production studios, like we talked about, talking to each other. If you have Insomniac Games working with whoever's making the TV show, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Sony internal does Sly Cooper. There's no reason why you can't get those resources available to you to make this a good Sly Cooper show, or Jack and Daxter, or what. Like you have
Jack and Daxter would be a good one.
That would be a good one.
They have plenty. So, I mean, I would be very curious as to what you want from PlayStation Productions. Let us know in the comments to the left
Below.
of Mark. Just literally, this is that diagonal. You see that little eye where the video was earlier? Just right past it, right up there. But that's not what's important. This
I'm
is
legitimately going to try to put
the important shit.
I don't know why you're raising your
I
glass.
just want to cheers you guys because I just want to distract you. Moving on to our topic of the show,
awful.
tots. I don't know if you've seen it today, but there's a brand new handheld coming out that is very interesting in and of itself. It has a black and white
Strange.
screen. It's strange. Along with a crank on the side. This handheld will have seasons of video games developed and published
12.
to it. So it'll be 12 seasons or 12 games?
12 games.
12 games for season 1. And then they're doing a second season. So
They've confirmed the
they're
second
going to do multiple seasons with it.
Honestly, I didn't see that part, but-
You get a brand new game each week where you get to play around with it. Made by notorious developers, including the developer of Katamari Damacy, like Damasi? I don't know, it doesn't matter. Katamari. And other smaller developers that are kind of playing around with this concept. But it just made me really think about the fact that technology today is becoming so unified and sleek and perfect, and it's kind of boring. Like, I really think technology should be weird. Like, the Switch is a great example of that, where it's weird, but it's functional.
Yeah.
So
As long as it works, I'm fine with it. Again, like being weird for the sake of just being weird doesn't make any sense to me. Though this being saying, okay, this is going to be an artsy piece of equipment that we have. This is going to be something that is super specific. And if it catches on, I think they'll do multiple seasons. They're going to continue whatever they have to make money on that. I think it's like we talked about the $150 price point. Is
yeah,
just a little steep.
$150 is a little steep for something that's supposed to be funky and fun.
But at the same time, like I could totally see us enjoying these like shorter valued games that are more artistically put in. Like we've always talked about, like, you know, what was it? Robots, Death, and Love.
Yeah, Love, Death, and Robots.
Love, Death, and Robots. No, it's wrong order.
That was
My
really
bad.
interesting.
Yeah.
Straight backwards. Like,
It was on Netflix. It was really interesting seeing these totally different art styles, totally different types of
Storytelling.
stories
Yeah.
and storytelling, but watching it in its full 15-minute universe.
Yeah.
And I think this is also contributing into that same like category,
Headspace,
where you're
yeah.
gonna like have this like really short but artistically beautiful game with all these kind of like, you know, contexts, and it's going to be its own universe. And
Yeah.
I think that that's completely fine with me, and I'm not going to have any expectations for it other than what it is.
Well, and like the example game they showed, like when we talk about a crank, it's like a fishing reel.
Yeah.
Like where you're cranking it on the side, and they showcased one game in which you play as a robot, and how you control that robot is that you crank it, he moves from left to right through a screen, and as you crank it, depends on the speed he moves, and he is supposed to
Interesting.
go on a date with another female robot. So if you move really quickly, you fail the date because you have nothing to present to her. But you can go a little bit slower. You can pick a flower. There's a butterfly. Like there's objects you can interact with, and then go to her. And depending on how fast you crank, depends on how fast you go. Time you can rewind time.
And at the end, you're going
That's
to be doing a
interesting.
real big workout.
So there's enough funk here that I think you can create something fun that's not erotic.
Why not? That's fun too.
You're not wrong.
I'm gonna go back to the hot coffee mod.
But it reminds me of, God bless it. But it reminds me of like Sony's PS4. Like the PS4 is a standard console, but you have this touchpad in the middle, and it feels like like developers just did not know what to do with it, and Sony themselves did not lean into it. Like they develop games all the time, and they just did nothing except make it a giant map button.
But to be fair, though, it's not something that they're really supposed to do. They give the tools to the developers to make it happen.
This is true.
You know. So, but like realistically, this is something I feel like that they should try to expand on. Maybe like even with the crank system, that kind of thing. Like if somebody else could build a device to implement with other things, that would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we have Nintendo with the again, we talked about the Switch. It has the Joy-Cons. It's just very different, right? You know, it's just not the same.
But I like it more in one way and not in others. They're both
Lighter and
good.
refreshing,
Yes.
bolder flavor.
Absolutely,
100%.
and it is just.
Yeah.
But even having them juxtaposed was actually a good thing.
There's much
because
more of
the
a-
vanilla just hit me in the face, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Woohoo!"
That's what I was about to say. Is the vanilla really kicks you on this one or whatever? Like the
Man.
Evening Joe is a little bit lighter. I think.
Evening, well, no, by far this was definitely lighter. I think that is going to be great for like an after meal beer. Like if you were going to be like, you know, a lot of people like their coffee. That'd be my after meal beer.
I just love a complete and utter segue from what we're talking about. Talk about the beer.
And he just saw my face and he's like, "Yeah."
But I mean, Nintendo is notorious for doing these weird things. Like the Wii is a weird concept, and it caught on so well that it not only sold. Thank you very much. You go
That's
ahead.
for you guys.
Not only sold incredibly well. You're foaming all over the place.
I'll
You're
look it
falling
up.
apart. It's sold incredibly well.
Go get some paper towels, dog.
It'd be all right.
You're good. Go.
Okay, not bad.
But also develop like they had a handle
First,
that had
first spill. First spill of the series.
Yeah, we've done really well so far.
Yeah, we've actually done really well. I really thought it was going to be like one of us, first of us, just talking like this with our hands. But
It might be The Last of Us. But you got the fishing reel
so bad.
thing where you put the Wiimote in your fish and you reel it in and it's all tied together.
Well, the idea is that there were so many like compatible things for
Exactly.
the Wiimote. There was the gun if you wanted to play like Call of Duty, or there was the racing wheel if you were going to do like Mario Kart or something like that.
Exactly. And I
Like
feel
they
like
even made like there was a third party company that even made an actual tennis racket.
yes,
Why?
for the
For the love of God, why?
because it's fun. But again, like you look at today, and Nintendo isn't working with other companies for that. They're not really developing the weirder games
Yeah.
for it. There are steering wheels for the little Switch things, but honestly, the industry seemingly has left it behind.
Right.
And I kind of lament that fact because I do think as we get deeper into technology, as it becomes more integrated in our lives. You okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
just a lot.
There's a lot. You're not wrong. We not only need
That's what she said.
Oh. You got me. That was
this
awesome.
is what happens when we day drink.
Yep.
But I think
As
a
opposed
little
to night drink.
Happy Memorial Day, by the way.
a little bit of funk is necessary. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember from the early 2000s, there were like the micro disc sets where you had a little player, it was a cartridge, you pop it in, it had one song. Like it
No.
was a music thing, you'd plug your headphones in.
It was just like a soundbite. Yeah.
It was just one song.
I remember that, but
It's useless technology, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that we need to go back to that level, but it was so interesting.
It
and
feels
was
like
fun.
we're going back.
What was
it
it
feels like
called?
we're going back to like kind of the roots of like not when everything was so
can't remember. We'll have to look it up.
mainstream.
because I know I had one. It was a brief time, but I remember like having like the NSYNC cartridge or something like that with like 2 songs or something like that.
It feels. I think you're right. Was that?
You want to try that again?
You probably don't want to sing too much because we'll get copyright stricken.
Okay.
No, I agree with you in the sense of like if you look at the origin of the Nintendo entertainment system here in the United States, like the reason why we have the gray Nintendo that looks like a VCR is because Nintendo is so afraid of releasing the colorful Famicom, which is this red and gold console in the United States because it wouldn't sell.
Which is where the Joy-Cons come into play of like you can get whatever colors
Yeah.
you want to, a pink and blue, or the neon yellow, or actually or the pink and green,
Yeah,
the watermelon colors.
the watermelon
Yeah.
colors. God, I want them so bad.
Yeah.
But
The Smurf blue.
it's that level of like fear of not selling because you're not catering to the general
FONS.
audience. But I do think that the general audience would be okay with a little bit of weird. Like weird is part of our identity as a whole as human beings.
Is
Like,
it?
I don't care who you are. You do something weird. You do something funky at least once a week.
Admit it.
Admit it. This is an intervention. We're here for you.
Even down to a finger.
Or a knuckle. But we're moving away
Wrist.
from that because we've gotten into honestly what I like to call the Apple aesthetic. The Apple idea of like everything needs to be sleek and
Yeah.
form fitting, and that's not
But that's not
always the
functional.
case.
So
I mean,
I'm
let's
gonna
put
use-
it this way: Vita tried to do something a little out of the wacky with a back touchpad, and they got crucified. And
Play Tearaway, it's incredible. With
yeah,
the
the
back
one
touchpad.
game that used it right. Ah!
But that's Sony actually giving a studio and saying, "Hey, we have funky terminology and funky things. You should build it and showcase that we can use it."
All I'm saying is it's so like it depends on the time of year. It depends on the people that like it. I mean, it's like colors. Believe it or not, I would have paid to go get gray Joy-Cons. I'm glad they gave me gray Joy-Cons. I love the gray Joy-Cons. All you people with your colors, you're the freaks.
he's so bland.
So you're so bland. I want the pink and
You want to know
green.
what color my car is? Gray.
I
Like
think
a soul.
But I agree, though. I think it's become more about
can't
the
choose.
spectacle. It's become more about the flash than it has
Yeah.
necessarily about the function or the enjoyment or just, I guess, feeling good about what you're actually holding. That kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like instead of like it being like, oh my gosh, that looks fantastic. But
Well, I mean,
and that applies to everything:
well, and I think that there are
hardware design, software, games, whatever.
I think if you look at a few things, again, like Nintendo is my example here because they are the funkiest. Like, look at the Switch. The Switch as a whole does look very form factor. It's very
It's versatile.
bland, but it's also versatile, and you have the colors. You can take it with you. Like that kind of like. It doesn't have to be crazy crank. Build me a fishing rod so I can play it on my PlayStation.
That's what they built the cardboard cutouts for.
Yeah, I mean those are fun though. Like,
Yeah,
those
I
are,
agree. But again, it's versatile. It's able to
Yeah.
accommodate all these different things. But the thing that saved it too was the power. It's able to run Doom. Like things like that are what made it. That versatility is what made it successful.
But-
not necessarily the Joy-Cons, and the Wii itself was one of those like shock factors that
but-
worked really well.
But the funkiness of having Joy-Cons that could also be clicked
Yeah,
in
and
as
then
like a
pulled off.
handheld, like
or
is what-
into
is
a
what made it that.
controller.
Yeah,
or what-
Right, right.
It's that is still a level of funk when you compare it to PlayStation, Xbox, even PC gaming has very much gone to.
I bought a
Okay,
$30 Walmart controller and I like it better than I do the Joy-Cons.
So the wands to me were the last thing that Sony really did that were
Exactly.
like funky. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
like oh, this big glowing orb on the end of a stick is basically what you've got here. Honestly, that was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen, but it worked.
Yeah, I played
a lot
Beat
of people
Saber with it still.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like,
For certain
Still
games, it
enjoy
works
it.
better. I think playing Beat Saber with the Oculus controllers, I think that's what Dylan has, right?
Yeah,
It was fine, but I think playing with
The place-
ours, it just feels right. Like you actually have sabers.
well, so
Go
here-
home and play that, right?
Yeah, I know, right? You play it right
So
now.
I guess coming like to the center of the topic of doing something funky or weird.
Yeah.
I think there's a problem with it though.
I think culturally we've
Exactly.
now been pushed
So-
towards that
so my-
form factor.
My favorite example is is an interview with Elon Musk regarding Tesla.
Okay.
Ooh,
I don't know if you noticed with the Model S's, the first generation of Model S, there's a giant black hole, essentially, or a giant black like piece or high gloss piece or whatever that's across the front that has absolutely no no feature or function to it. It's just there. Do you have any idea why it would be there?
No.
Think about the new Model S's in the way that it's all paint across the front and it has that nice aerodynamic slope.
Okay.
It doesn't look like a grill. It doesn't look like it has an aerodynamic grill to it or an aero grill on the front to
Yeah.
absorb
the
air.
air
like a
doesn't need to
normal
go
car
through
does.
the radiator, but it might
Apparently-
need to cool the battery.
But no. So the battery actually has a very minimal cooling to it. And even then, the vents that are down to the wheel wells can do that. And the air that rushes underneath, because the battery pack is underneath
The car, yeah.
can do that. But the reason they put the grill in the front is because apparently in reviews that they had where they had paint running across the front of it was too striking and didn't look like a car.
Yeah, I mean culturally,
So now they have those on the front because Tesla's got a stake in the market now, and everyone knows what a Tesla is and doesn't give a crap about the fact that it's a car. They know it's supposed to be different.
yeah.
But at the time, to make that happen, to allow the culture to appropriate to it,
You have to give.
you have to give them a gradual piece that moves over and
Yeah.
give them an appearance that looks like something that they know already because people are too afraid of overbearing change.
Yeah.
It's the iPad and Apple scenario. They had the iPad ready well before the iPhone, but they said no, they're not ready for this, and so they put out the iPhone and got them used to it, and then brought out the iPad.
Well, and I think you're seeing that now. We have the Samsung Fold. Like we're getting into an age where cell phones are about to get really funky because people
Oh, yeah.
want weird
Well,
stuff.
To
So
be
that-
honest,
that
I would
changed-
enjoy that because of stuff like I want to read manga. I'm going to fold it out into
Sure.
my pad and
Yeah.
I'm going to read manga.
So that change is definitely accelerating because our generation that's finally stepping into our 30s, that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and our like our 20s, 30s, and soon to be 40s, we're starting
Don't say
to
it so.
we're used to that rapid change because that's the technology industry. It changes on a weekly basis. We're used to that.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and we don't know what's happening because the next big thing is already there, and the assumption is, oh well, it already exists. If not, I'm going to build it. Kind
Oh,
of thing.
by the way, all those satellites you thought were for internet, they're actually missiles ready to hold you hostage.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Elon Musk.
That's not at all what we're talking about.
But what I'm saying is like the point is that like the drastic change like that, new funky things coming out for our generation is much easier.
Yeah.
But if you want to still appeal to some of the older generation, like even our parents, that kind of thing,
You have a lot of work to do.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're not used to that like hard change like that.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the video game industry is concerned, how many of those older adults still play like that of our parents that
Yeah.
still play video games like that? It is fewer and farther between than ours.
Yes, I definitely think that there's a cultural hypnotism here of like things need to be sleek, they need to be this way. That's what people want. That's how we're going to sell them. I also think that there's a level of the video game industry trying to grow up and trying to be like we're not just toys, and so you move away from the funk. I really hope they go back to it. Like I want PSVR on PS5 to be just weird. Like we're getting the weird games, which is great. I'm very happy. The software wise, I feel like because it's so much easier for creators to come in, like software is just all over the place, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But you have to be careful because some people just can't. There's a line drawn in an invisible area of sand that once you pass that point, you lose like 80% of your possible consumers.
And again, I wouldn't want anybody to go like this handheld. I'm very interested in. I'm also kind of worried about because it's literally a device made to be funky, weird, and
Hence
play
the reason
around.
we talked about splitting it. Because I mean, we're gonna probably enjoy it for what it is, but for a $150 price point, each of us having one doesn't make any sense.
Well,
Yeah.
but it sounds like the market though is like you guys.
Exactly, yeah.
Like the people who are
Weirdos.
into the people who are into the weird different style of gaming, that kind of thing. Like me, who's much more the general consumer of gaming. Like I enjoy my AAA titles. I enjoy different concepts, that kind of thing. By the way, Splitgate, fantastic. Different
about that
style of
later,
gaming.
yeah.
We'll talk about it later. But like that weird.
Splitgate? I'm sorry.
We'll get there. That different style, that different look. Feel, whatever
Katamari,
it is.
like the funky
control methods, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
That's not something
I'm getting hungry now.
that necessarily appeals to
Katamari makes you hungry. Yeah.
Calamari does.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and you're both right. Like you can't just throw funk out there and expect the market to swap automatically. But I still think that there's a space, and it doesn't have to go all in one or the other. But I think moving away from uniformity to a level of like building yourself out to be a unique factor is very important. And I feel like we've shifted away from that when it comes to most technology, and I hope we come back to it.
I mean, if
I
you're
just
talking
want
about
you to point this out. You're pointing at us. We're only 60% out of a table of 3. And you are just as much of a geek, if not more of a geek, case in point, than we are. But at the same time, like it still doesn't like intrigue you on something that's too weird. So even someone that's in this spectrum of what we're looking at is still only going to be somewhat interested.
Well,
and
so-
even then, they're not going to
so
be willing to put money into that.
The last thing that really came to me that was really over the top, weird and interesting and everything like that, because it was a true innovation in the space, was VR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, a crank system for, a handheld console anyway that only is going to have 12 games. To me, that's not over the top strange because those games are purpose built for that device, which is neat.
Yeah.
That's fine. Now, gaming's not my biggest forte in there anyway, but don't get me wrong, it's cool to see that they're building the game sort of based on this idea of having a handheld crank system or like a purpose built console, but it's not like game changing. It's not like it's something that's universal, something that's really going to like reinvent the space basically, because VR does that. The idea is it transports you,
Yeah.
And the next thing that would do that is like for me, the next thing that would do that, and we've talked about this before, is stationary machines like unlimited or infinite
Haptic
treadmills
feedback and stuff.
Yeah. Like things that really physically transport you to a space, like short of like neuro implants, and that kind of thing that actually, from a sensory perspective, literally transmit you there.
I just want to take this into account. Take that winding toy portion of it out. Is it really special?
No, of course not. Yeah.
No.
But
it's like having a Monopoly handheld that plays only Monopoly.
Well, but I think it's the same factor if you look at the Vita. The Vita touchpad we were just talking about wasn't utilized by everyone. This crank won't be utilized by
I'm
everyone.
That was
sorry.
the one I was thinking of. You were talking
Sony
about
was
the touchpad
freaking
on the
retarded
PS5,
and didn't do what they were supposed to.
They should have showcased that touchpad to be a thing. Instead, they
Even
just
then,
kind of
like it
left
didn't have to. It's just an option. But you could have at least said, "Hey, we brought an awesome Uncharted. Hey, we brought a Killzone.
Yeah.
We need to really help support this," and they dropped it.
It still comes back to the developers to make that happen. So the problem is that you end up with a multi-layered approach of this weird factor. Yes, Sony developed a product that has touch devices on it. You had the Vita anyway that had like the touch pads on the back of it. You had the PS5 that has the touchpad on the front of the controller. But the problem is that are the game developers going to change up their game that drastically to allow manipulation, that kind of stuff? Is Call of
That's
Duty
not the
one
point
of the bigger?
this piece, though.
But what I'm saying, but I guess the adaptation of it is going to be extremely difficult.
But as
multiple levels.
as Sony, who develops it and has has video game developers, they can work with them to actually showcase why you'd want to use it. That would be the whole point.
Oh yeah.
Like they are actually one of the few companies that develops hardware and software in a way in which they can go funky and then go, hey, guess what? We have these 5 developers, one of them being, Sucker Punch or Naughty Dog, which is like world renowned, and this is how they use this technology. You can use it for your own stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just not, and
Yeah.
that's the problem in my eyes.
Well, and not to mention, it just wasn't advantageous. Like, it's one of those things that just looks kind of corny.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
does now,
even
yeah.
with Tearaway, like with the whole back touch thing, I was
man,
like,
Tearaway, the
it was
back
okay.
touch was so
I platinumed the
perfect.
game. I'm not gonna lie, it was an easy platinum except for that one part, and it caused me a lot of trauma.
All right.
But I mean, wrapping up our conversation, I do think we are about to enter another age of this.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about cell phones that are trying to be more adaptive, more interesting, combining various technologies like wearables into your
Yeah.
cell phone itself.
We're seeing a lot of change into our normal everyday lives, like
yeah.
with the integration of technology into our lives, and as well as the invasive parts of it too. I mean, we've had to take big steps in allowing Alexa and Google to come into our house with microphones.
Mm-hmm.
We had to allow, the watches to come with us and do all these things, check our heartbeats, and also give us that kind of information.
0 beats per minute.
Boom, dead on
He's
the
straight
inside.
up dead.
But there's a lot of things to look forward to, and
Yeah.
without some kind of change, we're never going to see anything new or cool.
Yeah.
And so I am a fan of stuff like this.
Yep, and
which
I'm
brings
willing to
about
support it.
like, I mean, there used to even be a fishing game. They used to have just that did just that. Like it was fun.
So I'm going to clarify my point because I've given a lot of negative. I guess is our understanding of why this hasn't happened. I think it's cool to see it happen.
Yeah.
I just, from a realism perspective, don't think it'll take grip.
I think it needs to. But let us know in the comments what you
Yeah.
think about weird technology, whether you think hardware is just fine as it is, does it need to change. Again, above mark, to the
Below.
left, like this diagonal arrow that way.
Below.
Don't know why
Be
you did this
below,
thing.
not
I
below.
believe
Below.
he's blowing somebody.
Below.
It's time for last call.
Last call.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. A couple of quick shout outs. For one, of course, if you are not watching it, you should. The Strange Challenge Season 2 is still going on. New video dropped this week, which was super cool. I got to vote. It makes me happy. I was like,
I
voting.
forgot to. She's probably mad at me.
Yeah,
Nah.
she should be.
She's not.
Yeah, it's
a
fine.
lot of us forgot to.
Man, I looked at some of them and I was like, I'll get this after the podcast. Definitely didn't.
We are currently also working on other content, so always check out the Strange Gaming channel here on YouTube. We have all kinds of videos coming out left and right. Of course, we also have our Twitch streamers, Xphobia and B Scotch and Dots. One's affiliated, one's not. We love them both just the same.
Yep.
They're great.
Another one to add to the list is actually Queen Crystal. She's been on her
Ah,
regular
yes, of
schedule.
course, she has
She's
been.
been playing a lot of Smite. She's been playing a
And
lot
Realm
of
Royale.
Realm Royale.
And I'm sure you'll also see Thug Nasty and Tumbleweed himself as well.
Yep.
We got a lot of streamers. We're going to probably just rotate between the shout outs.
It's funny to watch
They'll be down
her.
in the description below. Take a look at them.
She's actually pretty good. And what kills me is when she's like about to get shot.
When she's screaming at the top of her lungs, you feel like somebody's dying downstairs while we're recording.
Well, no,
yes.
Did you guys see the edit I put in last episode? With
No,
the,
I
I
need
do.
to watch that because that was probably
no,
funny.
no. So like, there's parts of her stream where she is just like straight up screaming because she's getting shots from somewhere. It's more funny when she doesn't know where it's coming from, so she's panicking. Like, and that's where we got the screaming at the top of her lungs. So
We also have a Discord that is open to the public, so feel free to join. The link will be in the description,
Yeah.
wherever that may be on YouTube. It's
Blow.
always moving. It's kind of weird.
below,
He just wants to blow something. It's
not
really weird.
blow, below.
We're pretty integrated. We'd like to talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
As much as you
So
want to talk to us.
Yeah.
if you don't want to talk in the comments, you don't want to talk on Twitter, you can always find us on the Discord. No big deal.
We have a lot of people on there that are a lot smarter than us, and there's a lot of people on there that are a lot dumber than us.
I'm going to say a majority of them are dumber than us.
That's not true.
Moving on to the question of the week, I kind of want to talk on this a little bit because I was feeling a little worn out this week. But what is it that you do when you are feeling worn out?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's not start with me.
He's got to clear his mind of all
So there
porn.
are a couple things I tend to do. I have a few comfort food television shows. One of them being House. Absolutely adore that show.
Ooh,
okay.
Anytime I'm
Yeah.
feeling just kind of nasty, I put that show on. It just makes me feel better. Parks and Rec, Friends. Like there's a couple of them that just really hit the spot for me. Office has become a new one in that little plethora. Also, older movies that I grew up with, like GoldenEye is a movie I watched since I was like
Wow. Okay.
7 years old. So I will watch that movie over again.
One of my favorite Bonds, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Die Hard with a Vengeance is another one that I just can watch over and over again, and Jurassic Park anytime.
Okay.
When it comes
I
to
like the original Die Hard better.
I prefer Live Free, Die Hard.
you're a piece of shit.
What the?
Not a good day to Die Hard. Jesus Christ. that was
No,
bad.
no. I also will pick up some old manga, like I'll
I
reread
love
through
the
some,
judgment that just streamed across
Yeah.
the stage.
Whatever
no,
that-
both of you are like,
some old manga that I'll pick up, like old Bleach, like 100%. I'll just dive into that. Or Final Fantasy 9. Like I can play Final Fantasy anytime I'm feeling just garbage and I just want to do something to take my mind off of it.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 9 is right there for me.
Yeah, I feel you. Most of me is involving meditation. Believe it or not, it's not like me like sitting there cross-legged and being like super like focused, like, no, it's not like that. It's more like me
How
like,
dare you make fun of people who yoga?
like having a drink and sitting at a chair, no noise, no TV, just dog sitting next to me, petting my dog, just kind of like relaxing, getting my mind clear. Also, I do have a couple of movies that I like to like push, being one of them. No one understands it. I do.
It's a good movie.
It's fine.
Okay.
That's definitely on my case. And also manga. You know,
Yeah.
I do like to read some manga from time to time. Or then another thing that actually comforts me a lot when I'm worn out is some old school whacking it. Linkin Park. believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
Wow,
Absolutely.
okay.
Just
Absolutely.
getting if I'm in the car, listening to old school Linkin Park gets me back to a time of much simpler thought processes. So when I was a kid, I was always the guy that had everything kind of straight out. I had my goals, I had my path, I was already set. That part of my life was easy. It was the hardest part was figuring out what to do for fun. So like getting back into that time realm in my brain is just it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I'll put on 1,000 Suns anytime.
Oh yeah.
Okay. No, for me, it's a lot of it's hanging out, just either drink, music, whatever it is, that kind of thing. You know, a lot of that, I guess some of the more generic stuff. For me, it's actually Italian opera.
Interesting.
Like whenever I'm like, and it's not like I'm hanging out in the room. It's more of whenever I'm doing something to blank my mind out and let me focus on
It's your
something.
version of meditation.
So right. So
Yeah.
software development for me is that meditation to some extent because it's a hobby for me. It's a passion. It's what I enjoy doing. So
Yeah.
this laptop is one of my favorite places or favorite things to sit in front of because I have all of my development software here. I have Spotify on here with my Italian opera ready to go. And the Italian opera, because maybe it's because I don't understand the language, I literally just blank out on it and enjoy the melody, the tone, and the vocals that come with it, that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Drinks are obviously another thing, like for me, but movies are a big one. So I've told you guys about the server I literally have here in the house, in the
Yeah.
garage. I mean, you can hear it running right now because it's like 95 degrees outside. But the server has like a collection of 200 and some movies, all of which I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
And especially lately, I've just been able to pick one out and be like, let me scroll through the list. Oh, that looks good. I haven't seen that in a while. Let me pick that out, and I've just started watching it.
That's awesome.
Like I watched Sully the other day.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
You know, just something random, that kind of thing. But with a drink in front of me or with the work I'm doing, whatever it is. But TV shows also do it for me
Yeah.
too. The Office made it on that list.
Yep.
Was it How I Met Your Mother's always my favorite. It's always my big one.
All the way up to the last season, I'm with you 100%.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Scrubs. Scrubs is another
Yeah,
one anyway.
Scrubs is
like
good
it's
fun.
always a good one anyway where I look over
I
and
can't
literally
do this all
any-
on my own.
anything that I'm looking at on Scrubs usually makes me chuckle.
Yeah.
And so it's like I can look at it, chuckle for a minute, and then go back
Go back to what
what
you're
I'm
doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's me in house.
Life is good.
but it's also whatever current series I'm on too, or whatever, like where I'm just here and then my attention's back and forth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Ballers has been my latest one because
My boy.
I'm finally back into season 3, picking that back up and
Oh.
going through it all. So I actually restarted the series over because
Yes.
I was like, I don't remember.
The-
Let me go
Yeah.
back through it.
The overtop ridiculousness of that show is just so good.
It really is, but it's
They're such a
it's-
good pair.
It's so good.
It's amazing. It really
Yeah.
is. You
Yeah.
know, I enjoy it thoroughly. So like whatever series I'm on at the time is
Yeah.
always great. You know, Game of Thrones, Ballers now.
Very
whatever it
cool.
was.
I feel like in a time where like we need it seems silly that we need some kind of stimulation in order to even meditate now. But at the same time, like I totally understand it. Like it's not necessarily about it's about the level of stimulation.
Yeah.
Well-
It's not that you want to turn off. You just want to bring it back down to a
Uh-huh.
normal level.
If you guys want to meditate after the show anyway, with some chemical stimulation, I have some.
There are some
I have
stipulations.
cigars downstairs that we can go through.
That may be a
That
factor
sounds
here.
like a good idea.
Let us know what you use to just kind of unwind when you're feeling worn out. Leave it in the comments above us.
Below.
Feel free to
Below.
tag any of us in it so that way we can talk to you as
Below.
well. You can find us on Twitter, the Discord. Please talk to us. We love having conversation. As you
Yeah.
can tell, we're here every week having
we
at
do.
least an hour, if not more. Sometimes a lot more.
Overrunning the episode,
but until-
because we like talk.
Until next time.
Talk.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Also, Ocean's 11.
Ooh.
Oh.